Victims' Voices with Fighting Hard is paid for, in part, with the federal highway safety funding by the Missouri Department of Transportation.
Victims' Voices with Fighting Hard. All right. This my start. Was that my start? Okay. I didn't know if that was my start or my end. All right. So Charles Bryson.
I just thought he was clapping at my
No,
my
that's
response.
we don't have our. We don't have
I was excited because I thought someone was clapping at something I said, which is unusual, but that's okay. I'll take it.
We're gonna need to bring the thing next time. Okay, so Charles Bryson, you are currently the policy catalyst for TrailNet.
Yes.
And I would just let you tell me more about your background and why is this traffic violence prevention and pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, is important to you.
I think the several big things out of my background is I used to be the director of Department of Public Safety for the city of St. Louis, which had, 8 or 9 different other departments underneath it at the time, including EMS and which is Emergency Medical Services, the fire department, building division. And so you got to see firsthand on a day-to-day basis how the impact of government as it relates to people and how by instituting a good policy or a good practice, you can change the lives of people. Then I became the director later on of the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency for the city, which is literally one-on-one helping somebody bridge a gap who feel like they've been discriminated against either in housing or employment or public accommodation. So I got very much familiar with public accommodation in the city of St. Louis. So my role now really is to take all of that background and say, what policies, procedures, and practices, what funding opportunities exist for St. Louis to be a better, in St. Louis County, to be a better place for primarily, number 1, pedestrians, number 2, cyclists, and number 3, drivers. And I don't say anything about cars because they're drivers. So when people talk about a car hit someone, no, a driver drove into someone. Let's be clear about the language
Choices.
because we really need to understand that cars don't drive themselves. Well, I shouldn't say that now, but a driver, no matter what they were doing, they drove into someone or into a building. And that's the important part is you got to pin what happens back to an individual.
Now, I heard policy in this, and the purposes of Victims' Voices is quite a few, whether it's families telling a story or a survivor telling a story. Tell me more about your perspective of the importance of centering the survivor's experiences in policy from that perspective.
I don't think it's done enough. I think that's a shame because, again, when you're talking about cars driving into people, that's sort of how the news plays this out. There was a human being, there was a person who was hit by a driver, another human being. And oftentimes we don't tell the story from the victim point of view. And that's a negative because I think what it does is diminishes their point of view, but it also does not mandate then that the policy people, whether they be the Board of Aldermen, County Council, or any of the departments in city and county government, they don't have to answer for that person because, well, they're just a victim, but you don't really hear much about them on the news, whether it's the channel, the news, the TV news stations, whether it's the newspapers, you really don't hear their perspective. I would love, and I'll give you an example. There are people I've been working with, several organizations for those who are disabled, and trying to get them to make that leap into politics, telling those elected officials, telling those department heads, we have a serious challenge trying to get around this city or county because of your activity. It is remarkable that they don't necessarily want to do that. And so I've been plugging with them for months to try and make that happen. And that's been, I'm getting there. I'm closer. We might do a conference where it is nothing but those who have a mobility disability of some sort and the various city and county department heads, and say, we need to work together. And this is how we should do that.
It's very interesting that you speak on that. There's quite a few individuals who have been impacted by hit and runs, from in wheelchairs, specifically in North County, Jana Station Road, a couple of other cases that I've taken a look at, and we are digging deeper into those voices. We speaking about systems, right? These systematic issues and challenges and barriers with the social systems that re-traumatize some of those families or silence victims. What role does TrailNet play in the re-education of why we need to move the needle to move away from some of those barriers that exist?
Well, I think the most important thing for me is education and information sharing. This is how you do these things. This is what's coming up. So when we talk about complete streets, what does complete street means for you as a person in a wheelchair, person in a walker? What does that mean? What does that look like for you? How do you get outside of your home environment, wherever that is, so that you can enjoy life? I had a lady, kind of one of the oddest calls I ever had is a woman who was blind using a cane, who in the winter couldn't tell the difference, this winter, couldn't tell the difference between the sidewalk and the ice on the sidewalk when she tapped her cane. So how was she able to get around, and what restrictions had government maybe inadvertently put on her? So if you don't clean the sidewalk and you don't clean the street and you don't put protective barriers up for bicyclists, what you find out is there are people who have walkers, who have, or in this case she was blind, wheelchairs, were in the street, and because they couldn't use the sidewalk. So you've now created this barrier, but you've also opened an opportunity for someone in the street to get hit, improper lighting. So we have to teach and educate individuals and organizations as well how to advocate for these things, where the money comes from, how it is used, what city departments or county departments uses the resources, and how you then can begin to advocate for improvements so that you can get around.
We have victims who's not tied to the advocacy space, right? Victims who has sat with me and their stories are no longer on the news. They drive or have passed their spaces in which they've lost their loved ones. They're not familiar with TrailNet, right? How does someone that's sitting in a victim seat can tie the excellent work that your organization's doing and saying, hey, that's the organization that's helping me? How does that become more relatable to those victims?
One of the things that we've thought about and talked about internally is that role of how are we the institution that reaches out to others, or do we
partner with us,
or do we partner with you and other groups who have better access? I'll agree. Not everybody has access to you or some of the other institutions, so that's the difficult part, and frankly, it's the part that there's really no money for. Mm-hmm. For us to hire somebody to make those phone calls, get the information from the police departments or from emergency medical services, fire department, whomever, and say, hey, we're here to help, but what do we do to help? And so we don't want to put ourselves in a position to where we have overextended ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so working with you all and some of the other nonprofit organizations who do cater to those folks, that's about the best way that we can try to reach everyone and do it on a regular basis. But we also have to make sure that our education information packages are such that as things change, which they do on a regular basis, how are we able to update people on a regular basis?
I think one of the most impactful things that TrailNet does that does resonate to the families in which I've spoken with is the TrailNet crash report. TrailNet has been a leader in creating a report that's not only digestible, it's readable, and individuals can look at that report and say, oh, that's my neighborhood, right? So I think I will say, and the leader in this space regarding victims' voices and fighting hard utilizes that report when I'm doing road shows and presentations, and I speak on behalf of the work that TrailNet is doing to put that information out. So I would say that's one of the leading factors that I applaud TrailNet on is continuing the efforts with that report, as well as outlining some of the most dangerous intersections, individuals that have the statistics are there, but we all know that there are lives beyond those statistics. So I would say that is a huge factor, and that is ushered into the homes, the TrailNet crash report.
I appreciate that. The one caveat is those crashes, if it's not a fatality, those are the crashes that we know about.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest to you there's another third or fourth people out there who have been hit or almost hit by a car, or truck, or whatever that never get reported. And so I'm always cautious whenever we produce the report. Two things. Number one, it's yearly. We may need to do that a little more often, quarterly or whatever.
Yes.
But number two, we need to find a way to reach everyone in a mechanism so that if they have been brushed, touched, hit, that's recorded. Because that may change some of the hot spots that we now have in the report.
You know, I agree. Underreporting is huge, right? I often have conversations with individuals at MoDOT, speaking to so when I speak to statistics, I speak to statistics as an approximate, right? Because we know that quite a few traffic crashes either has been underreported or not reported at all. So when we look at it from that perspective, we know that there's more there. And then when I'm having the conversations with the families, I know that there's more there as well. So you guys are doing the work, TrailNet's doing the work, Fighting Hard is doing the work, and several advocates are doing the work. What are some of the positive changes that you think that is happening, that is moving the needle in this traffic violence prevention space?
Well, I think most of it involves the political will is now there to make changes. The financing isn't there yet, but the political will to do it, whether you're talking about St. Louis City or St. Louis County, they're willing to do that. In the city, which we've really worked hard on, Vision Zero, no fatality, complete streets, and now the passage of the City Department of Transportation, which then centralizes a lot of the work that a variety of departments were doing throughout the city. So I think at that end, and that's not coming up till 2029, although what we hear from the current administration is we need to find a way to fund it. So in the back of her mind or in the middle of her head and maybe in the front of her head, she's thinking, let's go ahead and move forward with this concept, this idea, this notion of the City Department of Transportation, because it passed in city government. About 88.5% of the people voted for it, which getting control of our city streets and sidewalks is very important.
Very important.
And making sure that everything is done correctly by one department is very important. So I think at the end, we've raised the awareness enough that now you have a lot of people who are interested in a topic the next step is, what is the next step? And that's what we've been working hard on with the city budget, county budget. And then after those budgets are passed, do they have what is necessary for them to work on, again, pedestrian safety first, cyclist safety second, and then driver safety third?
Last couple of questions here. Victims' voices, these are people that chose to tell their stories. What encouragement does TrailNet or Charles Bryson have for the listeners, specifically to those that feel unheard? And the final question I would have is, what would be your call to action to the listeners from the TrailNet perspective?
Well, I think they're both together. Is for example, tomorrow from 10 to 12, I think, or 10 to 2, there is a budget hearing where anybody can come up and talk about the city budget proposed and what they would like to see changed. One of the things we have been advocating for is, what are you going to do about the streets department and sidewalks? So what are you going to do about funding for sidewalks to make sure they're not only equitable, but the city manages these sidewalk improvements and it's not done 50-50 sidewalk and this other madness that is done. We need voices, so we need people who've experienced, as we get to later this year, 25-20, so 25 miles an hour speed limit on arterials and 20 mile an hour speed limit on neighborhood streets. We need people who have been victims of car crashes to come and say, y'all need to reduce the speed. And somebody yesterday said, well, why don't you ask for 2020? I don't think I'm going to get 2020, but I'll be happy 25-20 with a lot of traffic calming measures. We need those voices to be to roundly at those public hearings, those board hearings, to say we need to be up in the gallery. We need 25-20 when that comes up. We need money for sidewalks and a way to have them fixed by the city.
Now, is that a board bill?
It's not a board bill yet.
Okay.
It's I think it's on 25-20 will be, I want to say August, but the funding for streets and sidewalks is going on right now. Gotcha.
Charles Bryson, TrailNet. I truly appreciate you coming by.
Thank you for asking.
The victims' families that we spoke to, we appreciate the work that TrailNet is doing. And again, welcome you back at any time. Feel free to come back, and thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Fighting Hard would like to thank all the families and supporters, General Motors, Tom Everson of Keep Kids Alive Drive 25, and MoDOT. Up next on Victims' Voices with Fighting Hard.
Well, right now I have pain shooting from my shoulder into my lower back. I have chronic headaches. Yeah, I live in chronic pain. It's almost a full-time job just trying to be here. I'm here to tell my story, to tell people what it's like being alive and dealing with this. Every time you get behind the wheel, you have the potential to drastically impact someone's life.